when we see the fat over there with a bacon fat, it's not just fat. It's actually an adipose tissue. So we are trying to mimic the whole adipose tissue system by using our microencapsulation technology. So we can recreate a similar structure, like microstructure, and at the same time not only bring up the melting point, but also create a similar texture and profile. Our COGS is not that crazy compared with cell culture or fermentation approach, but our processing is the same.
Everyone, in today's video, we're looking at a really cool company, Lipid. They are making fat using microencapsulation technology. Now, what is microencapsulation technology? Well, if you've ever taken, I don't know, a Dayquil pill with some gel inside and it allows you to swallow it easier, it's basically a way of putting a bit of liquid encased in some sort of a casing, except this is done at a really, 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 really micro level. And so what they're doing is they're creating essentially fat globules that they can put a bunch of these little microscopic casings together to create different kinds of fat. Really cool interview. It is a year old, but still highly relevant because this startup is still just getting off the ground. Again, link is in the description. Let's get into the video.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenu. I'm the co-founder of Lipid, and in Lipid we are creating fat alternative to bring alternative food products to the next level. And why is it fat so important? It's because like fat is actually 40% or even more in a lot of different meat products, like burger patties, like bacon, like marbling steak. There are actually a lot of contribution from fat when we eat those meat foods, and that's also the reason why vegan meat still doesn't taste like a real meat today from our perspective, because we think that currently all the plant-based fat solution or the fat solution on the market is not good enough as an animal fat. And people usually only have a very limited solution. It's pretty surprisingly that people use coconut oils or palm oils or even some hydrogenated oil to try to mimic animal fats functionalities and try to improve the texture and mouthfeel. However, you can see that for those options on the market right now, their melting behavior is usually still very low. Like for coconut oil, when you cook the products, all the fat will just melt out. And that definitely affect the texture and also the releasing of flavors and the appearance of several different type of products. And that's the challenge we see on the market at this point for alternative food products. And in lipids, we bring phytofat as a solution to the market. And what we are trying to do is to create a high melting behavior fat that made with plant-based ingredients. So you can see from this image that it's a dumpling. It actually tastes pretty delicious after cooking. We tried for a lot of different times. And what we do over here is we mix our fat with like pork, plant-based pork matric. And after all the cooking process, the fat will still stay stable in the products. And the first thing is it brings the juiciness into the meat. And the second thing is it also improves the texture, the mouthfeel, because the fat doesn't melt it out after cooking. And the third part we think is very important is that it actually also brings a better nutritional profile. So a lot of fat we are using today is still saturated fat in the products, like for coconut oils or palm oil, saturated fat composition is still pretty high. And by using our solution over here, we actually bring down the saturated fat composition by 97%. And you can see that a lot of people on the market, they are trying to actually cut the saturated fat because for consumers, based on our study, consumers choose plant-based food because one of the main reason is because of it's healthier. However, if you look back in the nutritional label on the product today, it's maybe not that healthy sweeter compared with a real meat. So that's one side that we try to do a lot of experiment and research on, is how we can use unsaturated fat like olive oils or like sunflower oil, and to create a healthy fat solution, like fat alternative, but at the same time provide the same functionalities. And as you can see over here, so what we try to improve is on the saturated fat composition. We reduce 97%, so we can actually cut it to almost zero compared with all the product on the market at this point. Yeah, so our model is like we are actually trying to sell our fat and into different applications and ways. And what we are trying to support the industry and the field is, by using our fat solution, we want to enable a lot of different new products on the market, or better products on the market. So a very like low hanging fruit, like people are already using it at this point, is on a lot of ground patties or ground products. So you can see that there's a very juicy meatball over there. That's one of our prototype too. And actually this one is one we work with our partners together. So you basically use our fat as a coconut oil flex. So you can add it into the meat metric, and after like the mixing process, our fat will stay in the small pieces in it. And after cooking, you will just improve all the different perspective of the product, like over here, like juiciness, and also we improve the texture and mouthfeel. And at the same time, we actually study some flavor releasing. We find out that by using our way to deliver flavors, we can extend its delivery. And it's very critical, because the first thing is you want to not only make let the consumer taste the products not only in the first bite, but also in the second bite and third bite. So that's very critical, that you make sure the flavor was really stay in the products, but not just people can smell it but not really taste it. So that's very critical from our end too. So that's the first prototype that we work a lot today is on the ground and patties. And the second part is on the more, I would say, more advanced one, is that we can use our fat to enable different high fat food products. For example, like bacons, like marbling steak, like charcuterie products. So that's another big category that we are working on right now. And I'm pretty, it's kind of like a very big milestone for the whole lipid thing, that we actually launched our product recently with some of like our partners in Asia. So we launched our Fat burger patties in the chain vegan restaurants, and they use a lot of fat in their burger patties to try to improve the mouthfeel, but at the same time make it healthy. It's a little bit, it sounds a little bit weird, but actually by using our fat, as I mentioned, we can reduce a lot of saturated fat, and we also reduce the overall calories. So by adding more of our fat, it actually make the product better. Yeah. So that's pretty cool that we have some product on the market already in some restaurants. And we not only work with restaurant partners, we are also working with different food like products, consumer brands, to try to bring our fat solution to improve their products too. But I will say right now we are looking for a lot of different restaurant partners to try to see how our fat can make current products better. And also for this one, it's a very successful launch, that in a week they sell out like maybe almost 200 or 300 burger patties in just one stores. So that's a very good showcase and studies that we keep learning from this different launch, and we find out that our fat can actually work pretty well in the restaurant system. Yeah, so a little bit about us. I haven't really introduced ourselves. So Lipid is we are located in South San Francisco. So we are US based food tech startup, and my background is in chemical engineering, and I did a lot of research in material processing back in my PhD in Cornell, and that's where I met the other co-founder, Michelle. Michelle is a food scientist, and she's an expert in fat alternative that she actually spent all her PhD research in this topic. So she definitely know the field a lot. And our vision is pretty clear that we want to make food taste great and delicious, no matter it's animal meat or plant-based meat. That's what we really want to do in our like this startup and this mission. And by using fat solution and by focusing on the end goal of fat, that's what we bring different values into the product and into the market. Yeah, so a quick summary is that tune we can use plant-based ingredient, but we can tune its mutant behavior to make it behave like animal fat. And also the other part is that we can tune its texture, so it can be solid or semi-solid, that we use it in different type of applications. And the third one is that we make the nutritional profile a lot better by using unsaturated fat as a main ingredient. And the fourth part is that we extend the flavor delivery. We make sure the flavor really keep inside the fat and the oils, and try to mimic the animal meats or even other sectors like confectionery or baking industry, different flavors delivery system. Yeah, so that's the full part that we engineer a lot in the team and try to bring the fat solution to the market. And right now we have our headquarters over here in the States, but at the same time we are also working with a lot of partners in Asia too. So we set up an office in Asia this year, and we are trying to bring up our production line in this year and early next year. That's our current focus at this point, and we're working a lot every day. Yeah. And this is just some of the press release and awards that we have recently. So we actually won the CPF Food Innovation Challenge in Singapore last year, and also Bayer's Crop Science and Hello Tomorrow Challenge, third place in Hello Tomorrow Challenge in France, also late last year. So that's a little bit introduction of ourselves, and I'm happy to discuss and share more about what we are doing.
Would love to know a little bit where you are about kind of where you are on the cost curve, and how it compares to not only animal fat inputs, both high and low end, but also some of your competitors, be they other synthetic biology type companies or other vegan fat inputs. Would love to just get a sense of where you stand on the cost curve.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. And for us, we actually are. That's one of the focus. When we say we are trying to scale it up, the focus is actually trying to also bring down the cost to the level that people can use it. And as you see in the like the showcase, that we already work with some of the partners in restaurant system, that we actually already bring down the cost, that not like a synthetic fat, or like I would say that we are just a lot more closer to plant-based fat today, like high-end coconut oils or like other very functional ingredients in the field. Yeah, so our goal is to, in the end, bring our costs down to very compatible with coconut oil in the same range. So that's our final goal, and we are in progress to work on over there. But I would say the price or the cost at this point is already kind of affordable, that a lot of people are already trying it and even bring it in, use it in the market at this point.
Can you touch on, at a high level, your kind of intellectual property strategy, and I guess dive a little bit deeper into the unique value add from a technological point of view that you guys are doing?
Yeah. So from the comparison of IPs or something like that, I would say the main difference is that our melting point is very high. Like we can do 400 Fahrenheit or even above, and there isn't those type of solution on the market at this point. And with this very high melting point fat, we are not doing chemically modifying. We are not doing hydrogenations or using like, I would say people usually do hydrogenation to bring up the melting points, but we are not doing that. So it means that we don't have any trans fat in it. And more surprisingly is that we also don't use a lot of saturated fat in our solution. So the main difference is on the melting point, and at the same time, we don't trade off with the nutritional profile. So that's very key different comparing with all the other solutions. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Looks like we have a question from the audience. Brian Chow asks, what is your particular strength, science, formulation, or sales channel as number one?
Yeah, see that. Yeah, so particular strengths, it's the same as I just mentioned, is like we have a very high melting points, plant-based fat by using healthy ingredients only. And the science behind it is that we think very differently than other approach. Like I can quickly sum up if you are trying to make fat alternatives right now, most of the people traditionally use chemically modifying like hydrogenation, and we find out that it's not healthy because a lot of trans fat come out. So people move out from that and try to use some oleo gel technology. And recently people do like I would say cell culture approach or fermentation, those different type of approach, but still at the same time, the melting behavior system is still very low comparing with animal fat. And the reason behind it is because when we see the fat over there with a bacon fat, it's not just fat, it's actually an adipose tissue. So we are trying to mimic the whole adipose tissue system by using our microencapsulation technology. So we can recreate a similar structure, like microstructure, and at the same time not only bring up the melting point, but also create the similar texture and profile. Yeah, so that's the science behind it. And on the sales channels, we just started as a startup. I think we are still in early stage, so we are still exploring different approach to bring our fat and technology into the market. And at this point, I would say we try a lot on working with different partners in the food industry, and also working with different restaurant system to see how we can supply our fat in those channels. Yeah, but we are happy to take advice or any suggestions that or open opportunities on this.
Good. And the second question Brian had was, more companies enter into synthetic lipids. What are the key success factors, and how do you see competitive landscape 5 years from now?
Yeah, so definitely the first thing is cost. For synthetic lipids, fermentation or cell culture approach, the cost is very tough. Even 5 years later, how do you bring down to make it compatible with plant oils? I still think it's very challenging as a chemical engineers. And so let's assume 5 years later, all those synthetic lipid all works pretty well. In my personal perspective, I think what they will do is to try to replace some of the very high-end functional ingredients like flavor. So that's what I think synthetic lipid will probably work well in later on in the product. It's to bring in the value of flavors. So they will be treated as a flavor ingredient, but not really like the main oil ingredient in the products. That's my guess. And the second part of it is that for those synthetic lipids, when you try to produce it, you still get lipid molecules, which means that it's still like an oil. It's not like an adipose tissue. So people still have to work on structuring technology to try to make it solid, or try to make it performs really like a animal fat system. So that's actually what we are working on, structuring system. So I think we can work with those synthetic lipids pretty well. We can actually help them or even include their lipids in our system, and then to make it performs like in terms of texture performs like animal adipose tissue. Yeah, so I would say we are more like a collaboration situation, but not really a competition. And the second thing is like it also bring down the average cost if we can combine those different technologies together. Yeah.
I guess what's the consumer response in tasting panels, et cetera? Can you talk a little bit about kind of the consumer mouthfeel that information that you've gotten from either panels or blind taste tests?
Yeah, no, that's actually what I like to really work with restaurants because you see the feedback very immediately, and I would say the consumer response is really great. That they all feel like it's more juicier and also bring. I would say some of the feedback is on they bring in the sponginess into the products, and there are no a lot of holes like a hose in the burger patties. It sounds weird, but actually, what we observe is that when you cook the product with coconut oils or other oil system, usually there are a lot of empty hole in it because that all the oil melt out and the texture. That's why the sponginess kind of like just doesn't be there after cooking process. It changed a lot, and that's exact the same feedback we see from our consumers feedback, that a lot of them mention that they can feel the oils in it, and at the same time the burger patties, it's more spongy compared with the other like control version. Yeah, so that's one really good great feedback. And I will say the other feedback, pretty interesting feedback, is that when we co-launch some products in the very beginning, we find out that we tune our melting point to be very high, and a lot of consumer give the feedback that they didn't see the sizzling over there. So that's why we iterate our product design and we make our vital fats melting behavior to be close to like 330 Fahrenheit or in that range. So actually it will melt it out a little bit when you cook the product, but not totally stay over there like a solid. That's pretty interesting that people can really see those details as a consumer. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Brian has a follow-up question. Brian asks, no major challenge in design to scale in your pathway?
Definitely not. No, definitely they're definitely challenging in our pathway. That's of course, and that's why there are still a long way to go for us to bring it to a real industry scale. And I will say the bit our challenge of scale, that's it's the same as like probably like a fermentation or cell culturing approach. There are challenges in how to improve make a larger batch of bioreactor, and that's very similar in our case. Is that how do we scale up our each like production in each batch, like each reactor system? It's the same. So I would say that for us, it's very similar, that all we are trying to do is to drive down the cost in processing fee. Yeah. But the advantage or like some of the good part or easy part for us is that our main input is it's just oils and water. So it's our COGS is not that crazy compared with cell culture or fermentation approach, but our processing is the same. That's why we still need to prove a lot on scaling it up and bring it to industry scale. Yeah.
There are lots of companies working on the fat problem, trying to recreate animal identical fats. This is one of them. Excited to see where they go in the next few years. I'm Chris. We'll catch you in the next video.